Hello, my name is Martyn Hafley. I work for BASF in Texas. I'm a board certified entomologist and happy to be sharing this presentation with you today. It's called Bite, Sting, and Itch, Uncovering the World of Pesky Invaders. So here's our outline. We're going to start out with a safety message. Then we'll talk about the deadliest creatures and causes of death on our planet. A picture summary of how far we've come in pest control through the years. Then we'll talk about three plagues of mankind: fleas, bed bugs, and ticks. And then we'll have a summary and time for any questions. BSF is very focused on being safe with the tools that we use. And so I wanted to talk about something today, and that's our PPE that we wear to protect ourselves, follow the label, and not get exposed to pesticides. Well, most of our applications require us to wear some type of waterproof glove, for example, nitriles, very commonly used glove. I would like to say that these gloves not only protect us from any pesticide exposure, which we don't want to be exposed, even though they're very low in toxicity, but more importantly, these days they protect us from pathogens. And just for example, rodents. Rodents transmit a significant number of dangerous diseases. And since we handle rodent stations, we work in areas where rodents frequent. We can accidentally contact surfaces or breathe in pathogens that can make us sick. Just by wearing some PPE, we can help prevent some of these diseases. Another problem is we're working in commercial kitchens and you get into some wet, nasty areas, you can get exposure to different organisms as well there. So wearing these gloves, these disposable gloves, can help protect us and help prevent accidental pesticide exposure, but also protect us from some diseases. And when you're working with rodents, you will open a rodent station, and occasionally you'll find a visitor. Pretty common late summer, like a black widow. The PPE won't protect us from the bite of a black widow or a copperhead, but or it can if it's thick enough, but generally not. But it does help protect us from many of the other bacteria, other gross things that are living in there. There's another picture of one of those rodent stations that hasn't been serviced in a while. All right, we are talking about plagues of man. Let's talk about what creatures on the planet kill humans the most every year on average. And I will tell you that these numbers are estimates because some parts of the world where people die are pretty primitive. And there isn't a lot of record keeping. They're estimates, but they're fairly close. Number one killer of men or humans are mosquitoes. And the estimate is between 725,000 to 1 million people a year. Malaria is the primary killer, but there's other diseases like yellow fever and dengue. Next up, for creatures killing men are men, men killing other men. And this is, no global war here. It's just on average, men kill close to 500,000 people or 500,000,000 people a year. 500,000, sorry. And then snakes, the range here can be 40,000 to 60,000 deaths a year. And again, a lot of these deaths are in some areas where they're not as advanced. Dogs kill between, again, the ranges I've seen are 18,000 to 60,000. 35 is kind of in the middle based on a lot of the surveys. And most of the deaths from dogs come from rabies. A lot of the poorer, less developed parts of the world, dogs aren't domesticated. There's not enough food to feed the people, much less pets. And so dogs will get in packs, and they'll occasionally kill someone by just taking them down and eating them. But more often than not, it's rabies. You've got CC flies, which transmit something called sleeping disease, about 10,000 deaths a year approximately. Kissing bugs, which transmit Chagas disease, which can lead to heart attacks. That number may be greater than 10,000. A lot of the heart conditions that happen are not usually linked to kissing bugs. They do cause that. There's a snail that transmits a pathogen called freshwater snail, and it is in tropical areas, and this infection can kill about 10,000 a year. Scorpions. And there's some. We only have one toxic species in the United States out in Arizona, western New Mexico, but there are some parts of the world where a lot of the scorpions are lethal, including the Middle East, Northern Africa. And so there's about 3,300 guesstimate deaths a year to scorpion venom. There's a roundworm that infests people, and a tapeworm as well, very similar. And then crocodiles. This is first one to eat people, and that's about 1,000 people a year approximately. They think it may be a little bit more than that because most of the areas where crocodiles attacked are pretty remote and sparsely populated. So comparing the number of deaths to other creatures, what in the United States, now these are worldwide, what in the United States is the leading cause of death in 2023? They don't have 2024 data yet because the year's not finished. Number one killer and has been for decades is heart disease, about 700,000 people a year. Cancer second with 608. And a couple of years ago, this list had a condition that's not on here anymore, and that was COVID. It was the third or fourth greatest killer in the United States. It's gone now. Accidents, 227,000. You can go down the list. Stroke, emphysema, Alzheimer's, diabetes, kidney conditions, liver conditions. You can see the numbers here versus globally. So mosquitoes is the only thing that beats heart disease and cancer in just the United States. Again, we don't have a bazillion deaths from other animals, but we have some. Okay, let's talk about how far we've advanced in the pest control industry through some pictures in time. And this is a picture of a guy going down the street. He's running what you call a thermal fogger for mosquitoes. His protective equipment he's wearing is a suit, and that white cloud is a thermal fog that will kill any bug it hits. Strychnine, first reported as a rat poison in 1840 or control for an undesired spouse. It's still used a little bit today as a gopher bait, but most of its uses as rodent poison have been discontinued just because it wasn't as effective as some of the newer products, and the toxicity to non-targets was pretty harsh. This is a picture of Solomon Rose, credited with being one of the first American exterminators to have a business. The pest control industry, according to a book called The Rat Catcher's Child, which is out of print, get it for about $300 on Amazon. Not the greatest book, not well written, but it does tell the story of pest control industry in the United States, and it rose out of discrimination. Irish immigrants had come over after the potato blight, and they were looking for jobs in the northeastern United States. They couldn't get jobs in the Industrial Revolution because of discrimination, and a lot of them started their own little businesses as rat catchers, and that evolved in the pest control industry in the United States. Supposedly, this is the first pesticide that I'm aware of sold coast to coast. It's called Paris Green. It is an arsenical. Early on, our pesticides were designed with no concern for non-targets, meaning if it killed the bug, great. We don't care about the mice or birds in the field or the person applying the product. We just need something to kill the bug. So arsenic is dangerous to mammals, and this product was as well. Not terrible unless you ate it, but it was dangerous. Other pesticides included lead arsenic. So there's another version of arsenic. And here's some pictures of cotton fields and people dusting with something called calcium arsenic, another version. My grandfather did this, and he said he would be just completely white, covered in calcium arsenic at the end of the day. That didn't kill him. It may have made him sick once or twice. We never said it did, but it did. He did get covered in it a lot. Here's an interesting calcium arsenic product. Look at the manufacturer, Sherwin-Williams. We also made lead paint at the time, and a lot of the ingredients that went into the pesticides also went into paint. So it was a natural extension of their business. Many of you probably heard of the FMC Corporation. It makes Talstar. It's been around for a long time. They started with a guy named John Beam, no relation to the whiskey. He created a sprayer, a pump sprayer to control scale in California's orchards, and it evolved from there. Get to the FMC company today. Here's a picture I've got of someone getting their hair deloused, and it's probably a DDT powder or dust getting puffed on her hair. This is my favorite pictures. This is thermal fogging. That truck right there has got two tanks on it, the Jeep out front, and it's one of them's got DDT in it, one of them's got kerosene, and the DDT and kerosene are pumped onto a heated coil in that machine in the back, and the 95% kerosene, 5% DDT mixture creates a white cloud. And that thermal fog in that house will kill every bug. And DDT could control mice too, to a degree. It would kill some mice, probably the smaller ones. And even if it got enough of it on a cat, it would kill a cat. And that's why we did a lot of pest control in the 50s. Here's another picture of someone thermal fogging at night for mosquitoes. Here's a good picture of a truck on the beach thermal fogging for the no-see-ums, the little biting midge that are real irritating, especially on the East Coast. Here's an ad I love. DDT, good for you and me. Well, the truth is DDT gets vilified as this terrible toxic poison. DDT actually wasn't very toxic. You get it all over you and it really wouldn't bother you. The problem was persistence. DDT would persist in the environment for a very long time. If you got it on you, you would have it in your fat cells for about 20 years. When I was in college at Texas A&M, we could still, in 1988, 89, we could still pull bass or catfish out of the Brazos River, catfish primarily, and you could find DDT or metabolites of it in their fat. So it was banned in 73, and in 1989, we could still find it. Here's an ad I like. No flies on me, thanks to DDT. Here's a picture of a kid in Europe getting dusted for body lice. There's a louse that we have in Texas and anywhere in the South Central, actually even northern United States, that lives in filthy clothing. It's called a body louse. The nickname for it was seam squirrel. You'll get in filthy clothing, primarily homeless these days. And this little louse, unlike head lice and other lice, this one transmit trench fever, as you've heard of, or typhoid fever. And by dusting someone's clothes with DDT, they didn't have any problems with lice. It didn't really hurt the person. Again, you kept it in you, but it didn't seem to have any adverse effects. There was a lot of soldiers in World War II protected from trench fever by treating their clothing and their bedding for lice. And again, the trench fever, a lot of U.S. soldiers um, were protected and saved that would have died without the DDT. And there's another picture of a soldier getting dusted like that kid. And again, my grandfather had this done to him in France when he was fighting in World War II. This is a picture of a stewardess walking down an aisle with a bug bomb. This is when someone's leaving one port and going to another on a plane, trying not to take any bugs back with them. This is back when we smoked on planes, and I can imagine the air quality was something else. The bottom right picture is some workers in the San Joaquin Valley, and they're getting deloused, and they're on clothes on, they're getting dusted in every orifice with DDT powder. Notice the dude that's dusting them wears a mask. Don't care if you get it on you, but I'm not going to get it. I'm not going to breathe it. All right, so that's just a little fun and pictures. We have come a long ways. We are so much better now with our pesticide classes. They're toxic to the bug or pest, but not very toxic to mammals. We're smart in how we put these things out. We have great equipment. We understand not just using a pesticide, but using the other factors to control the bugs. So we're in a much better place than we were even 20 years ago when I first started. All right, let's talk about the plagues of man. And let's start with fleas. Worldwide, there are about 2,237 species of fleas. 94% of them feed on some type of bird. 74% are associated with rodents. Some of these bird and rodent fleas overlap. They'll feed on both. And the cat flea is the most common flea around in homes on dogs and cats in the United States. If you get a call for flea control in your business, more than likely it is cat fleas. Identification to cat or dog flea is not important. You're going to treat them the same way, but cat fleas are the most common. And in the United States this year, we have about 334 million people. And U.S. estimates have a number of dogs at 89 million and cats at 74 million. So there's a lot of potential hosts out there for fleas, food sources, if you will, and a lot of people that have those pets and could be challenged with flea infestations. Fleas have a complete life cycle. That means they go egg, larva, pupa, and adult. And development time ranges based on temperature. Fleas, like all insects, are cold-blooded animals, and cooler temperatures slow them down, and warmer temperatures speed them up. And so if you get a flea infestation and they've been there for a little while, you'll have all of the life stages in that house or outside the house or both. Here's the staggering thing that's important to know. When you see adult fleas jumping on your legs and you walk into that house, that represents only 1 to 5% of the population. Most of the fleas are in the immature, non-biting stage. It could be even as low as 1% in the adults. So if you've got khaki pants on and you've got a bazillion fleas on your leg, that is a very small percentage of the population. The population is about 50% eggs, 35% larvae, or looks like worms, and then the pupa are 10%. There is a high attrition or death rate, if you will, between the larva and the pupal stages. It goes from 35 to 10, so it's about a 25% loss. That's 15 between the eggs and the larva. So they don't make it all the way to adult, all the eggs that are laid, but a percentage do. So there are the eggs. There's a picture of them. They hatch between 1 to 6 days after they're being laid. Again, this is temperature and humidity dependent. You find the eggs where the pet rests. And I'll probably repeat myself here, but the adult fleas will infest a cat or a dog, and they're going to live their life on that animal. They don't ever want to get off. And they'll take a blood meal, and a few days after the blood meal, they'll lay some eggs. Well, the eggs don't stick, they roll off. Animals rest more than they run around. So it makes sense that as the flea is feeding and laying eggs, they're going to roll off. The majority are going to roll off where the animal rests. So that's the hot spot. Inside it may be bedding, it may be the couch, somewhere where they spend all their time. Outside it could be a shaded areas where they're getting out of the sun. But that's where you'll find the majority of the flea immature. The larva. Now, when those eggs hatch, they turn into little worms. The larva, very different looking than the adults. There are 3 molts, and it takes 6 to 36 days, again, depending upon temperature and humidity. These things feed primarily or exclusively almost on dried blood. And the dried blood comes from the adult fleas chewing on the animal, ingesting blood, and then partially digested blood passes in their poop and falls to where the down to the surface of either the soil or where the animal's resting, and that's called flea dirt, and that's what these larvae eat. And optimal conditions are 65 to 80 degrees and high humidity greater than 50%. So pale, legless, worm-like grubs, if you will. They don't like heat. They don't like dry areas. So you won't have these in the sunny, bright area of a yard where there is no shade. They're going to move away from those areas because they will die or desiccate if they stay there. Same in the house. They're not going to be in the dry, open area. They're going to try to be in the shadiest, cooler area. So indoors, again, where the animal rests, that it's not in direct sunlight. Outdoors, cool, shady areas with a little bit of moisture if possible. They can easily also be washed away by a flood. So if you get a lot of rain, they'll get washed away with the rain, or some of them will anyway. I mentioned that flea dirt. This is at the base of some carpet fibers. Animals been resting there. You'll have this black looking stuff, and that's the partially digested blood from the flea feeding on the animal and pooping out that. And that's the flea dirt, and the larvae live down at the base of the carpet. You can also see some eggs in that picture, one pretty clearly. So when the eggs hatch, the flea larvae come right out, and they have flea dirt to feed on or fecal matter, and again, then the cycle starts. Pupal stage. This is the stage that gives us trouble. This is the stage that pesticides don't affect. They're protected from just about everything, and they have to get out of this pupal case like a cocoon to get affected by the pesticides. So there's about a 2-week window where these things are developing where nothing touches them. So 7 to 14 days when they've gone from a larva to a pupa, and this is resistant to freezing, desiccation, insecticides, growth regulators. They have to pop out of this thing. The way this works is they'll sit in this pupal case, and a vibration or something will happen when they're ready to pop out. They'll feel it with a little carbon dioxide, what we breathe out, and they'll pop out of that pupal case, and the adult flea immediately seeks a blood meal. And these things can lie dormant if there's no vibrations, say a house that's got no residents, or it's an empty house or empty apartment, no traffic in there. The flea pupa can stay as pupa for like 4 months. So there'll be all this pupa sitting there, and you walk in, and your vibrations from your stepping will cause all of them to jump out at once. Might look like an insecticidal failure. They just are protected from the insecticides and have to pop out into the adult stage to get exposure to the insecticides to do any good. So again, it's delayed emergence. So again, you may have sprayed one day, and you need to let the customer know that it's going to take 7 to 14 days for all the fleas that are in the pupal stage to pop out of those stages to get in the insecticide you put out to get a kill, because your sprays do not kill the pupal cases or don't affect the fleas in the pupal cases. They're protected. When they become adults, their lifespan is 4 to 7 weeks, and a female will continue to live on the animal, feeding on blood and laying eggs and dropping out flea dirt. She produces eggs 24 to 48 hours when she's had her first blood meal, and then she'll continually produce eggs until she dies. So just go reiterate some things. They can remain in the cocoon up to 4 months. They when they feed, the blood meal only lasts a few seconds, and they'll stay on their host for all their life. And a female produces on average 300 to 500 eggs. Under optimal conditions, and this is if the world was perfect, this shows the reproductive potential of a flea. A female flea lays 27 eggs per day. After 50 days, over 1,350 eggs are laid. After 3 weeks, all adult populations increase accordingly as other females are producing eggs. They have an enormous reproductive potential. Again, ideal conditions don't happen, and not all the offspring happen, and they don't live that long and don't produce that many eggs a day. Looking at a flea, they are designed to live on a furry animal. They have a narrow profile, so they can move through the fur or hair easily. And they have backward projecting spines that help them not get pulled through the fur. So the spines help them stay in place and not get scraped out by an animal scratching. They also have elongated legs for I'm going to call it a coil-like projection for their jumping. So again, fleas, once they find a host, they try to spend their whole life there. Sometimes that doesn't happen, but most of the time that does. Fleas are disease vectors. They can transmit diseases both to people and animals. In our world, tapeworm is probably the number one thing they transmit to our animals. Typhus is another risk. And when a female, in that short period of time that's feeding on a blood meal, she can consume 15 times its body weight in blood daily. So multiple feedings, she'll drink, that little vampire will drink 15 times her blood meal, body weight in blood daily. The picture there shows some of the oriental rat fleas engorged with blood. This is the vector of the Black Plague that killed half of Europe during the Dark Ages. This is a rodent flea that occasionally will feed on people. Now, fleas have this spring or coil spring system that helps them jump and makes them, they hurl upwards or forwards, and they jump about 200 times the length of their bodies. If this was a person jumping, it would jump nearly 1,000 feet, and which is long ways. They also found that fleas don't tend to jump in the dark. If it's a dark situation, they won't jump. Common flea species, there is the cat and dog flea, and you find both of them in and around houses and homes associated with domestic animals or wild animals. They can be a problem sometimes. You've got squirrels or raccoons or rodents running through a yard, dropping, and maybe they're resting there or they're nesting in an attic or a crawl space, and some of the fleas develop there. And next thing you know, you got fleas in the house with no pets. Cat fleas are the most common by far. Will feed on pretty much any warm-blooded animal. They do prefer cats or dogs, but they're opportunistic. They'll feed on whatever they can get. And again, tapeworms are the primarily things that they're transmitting. Other flea diseases, typhus, cat scratch disease, and I guess that's Martyn. I don't even say that thing, and then some allergic reactions, some skin reactions to the bites. Can Other species that we don't run into much. There's a human flea. There's a tropical flea, a northern rat flea that we do have in America, and then one I've seen in Texas called the stick type flea that's absolutely nasty. It sticks to the head of birds like chickens and pheasants, and it looks like a tick. They never move once it's started. You got these little black shiny fleas stuck to their heads. It's gross. It makes the animal sick. Here's the one that we have in the United States, primarily out west, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, California, Oregon. It's the Oriental rat flea. And again, this was the one that was part of the Black Plague. We do have plague every year in the United States. This flea will cycle on Norway and roof rats, but also on prairie dogs. Prairie dogs are part of this plague vector a lot of times, especially in national parks. It's usually 100 cases, under 100 cases a year. It can be more. Arizona, California, Colorado, New Mexico it needs to be kind of a dry area. Every year you hear some cases around Yosemite, and this is again a cycle that we get into because say you kill the rodent or you have a rodent that dies and there's fleas that have been living on this rodent. Well, the adult fleas will move off of their food source because their food source is now dead and will attack a human or person. Or maybe you're walking by a prairie dog mound and some of the pupal cases pop open and fleas jump out. And one of these plague carrying fleas jumps on you. So it can, again, jump to people, and it does every year. If you catch plague early enough, it can be easily treated with antibiotics. But in Europe, there were no such antibiotics during the Middle Ages, and about 50% of Europe died from Black Plague. Just terrible, terrible disease without treatment. Another disease we have in the United States is murine typhus. It's a rat to rat to rat people disease. It is one of the most commonly transmitted arthropod infections, and it's very common. We have cases in Central and South Texas, Los Angeles, Orange County. All right, let's talk about we talked about the flea species, and here's a little more on murine typhus. The symptoms of murine typhus are headache, fever, weariness, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and a rash. That's the big indicator to a healthcare person that, hey, we might have typhus here. There'll be a rash. And so you also have a cough, abdominal pain, back pain, and then symptoms last for about 2 weeks with that rash developing. There we go. Okay, we have done a study now. Again, we have cases of typhus in the United States, and again, this is a rodent disease that fleas are part of the cycle. I did a trial in Oklahoma not too long ago where they sampled fleas off of dogs and cats around houses, and what they found is a little staggering. 30% of the 6 of the 20 cats that were sampled and 14 of the 32 dogs, 43% in Oklahoma, were positive with the murine typhus disease. So it's out there. I don't know if people are resistant to it or we're just not getting bitten by fleas and not catching it, but it's definitely out there in the South Central United States. So when we have fleas in the house, we have some goals of flea control. Eliminate the fleas from the customer's property, keep the fleas from returning, and do as good a job as we can without causing the least environmental interruption or impact. So things to remember. We talked about the hot spots where you'll find the fleas outdoors, and that's where the shady areas are, where the pets spend a lot of time that aren't sunny. And these are your hot spots where your immature are developing. And again, fleas don't make it in the open sun, and the larva will burrow underneath things only about a millimeter to 5 millimeters deep. A lot of times this will be in fur or hair that's dropped off of the animal. Here's a picture of what could be a hot spot in underneath basically a kennel outside. Inside, same thing. Where the animals rest. These are the places that you'll find the fleas. Are the flea matures? Is it a bed? Is it on a couch? Is it a person's bed? those are your spots you really got to focus on, because that's where those 99 or 95% of the flea population is cycling. And again, they're not going to be in a dry, sunny area of the house. They're going to be more of a shaded area where, the animal rests. So another part of this, okay, we've identified where the fleas are. What's something that has to be done in addition to our treatments? The animal that's infested has to be treated. And some of the best tools today are these over-the-back products. Very effective, very easy to use. Put a couple drops on the animal's back, and it gets in the system, and then the fleas on the animal are controlled. These things worked so well for a while that our flea business and pest control kind of went away. Fleas, nature overcomes, God's creatures survive, and the fleas have come back to a degree, but these are still valuable tools, and this is something that has to be done to get flea control. You can also bathe the animals if it's the appropriate kind of animal, because the adult fleas will eventually hop off of the animal, and soapy water will do this. There's also flea baths with insecticides, but really the easiest thing, pretty much the over-the-back materials. Younger animals like kittens and very young puppies, you probably need the warm soapy bath. And it's a good idea to do the flea treatment really close to when the animal's treated, within a day or two, either way. This helps kind of coordinate what you're doing and really help break the cycle. Vacuuming. Hey, could you just vacuum up all the fleas? No, it won't work that well. Vacuums help, but not how you think. They will vacuum up a few of the larvae and eggs, but not many. The impact really happens because when you're vacuuming, the vibrations cause the adult fleas to jump out of the pupal cases. And so this can trigger an emergence and help the fleas get into your insecticides and really help with control. Here's another picture of that flea dirt. And if you do vacuum and vacuum up and use one, or the homeowner does, the adult fleas that are vacuumed up or the pupa don't get killed. So you either need to discard of that container, the vacuum cartridge, dump it out somewhere in an outside dumpster or trash can, or put it in a sealed bag and then dispose of that, because they'll emerge from that vacuum. So if you use the old vacuum that uses bags, get rid of the bag after you vacuum. If you have one of the normal kind of vacuums today, dump that container somewhere outside in a trash can where you can't get a reinfestation from those fleas. So I've talked about some of these things, but here are the keys again to controlling fleas. First of all, the customer needs to know what's happening and how do you control the fleas. What should be expected with control from the pupal case problem, what they have to do. They have to cooperate. They have to treat the animal. They have to clean up if there's a lot of hair on the floor. And then once they've done their part, you add your treatment, and it helps break the cycle of infestation. To do that, you got to choose the right products, and you got to be thorough with your application. Let's talk about those materials. Outside or inside, you really need a broad spectrum of residual product. Primarily, these have been pyrethroids. There's a bunch of them. I'm not recommending one or the other. Summertime outside, macroencapsulated, probably lasts a little longer. If not pyrethroids, there are neonicotinoids, and there's one or two that's very effective. And there's also indoxacarb, the Advion product. Those three products, those choices, those chemical classes, all have residual to a degree, depending on where you put them, and all of them control fleas. In conjunction to problems, you can put out granules, pyrethroid granules, bifenthrin, primarily lambda or deltamethrin granules, and you would put these in areas outside where what we call, again, that hot spot, the cooler area where the animal rests. If it's a dog, if it's a cat, I might not do that, because cats are a little bit sensitive to pyrethroids. They're fine after the spray is dry, but wet, they're not so good on them. Anyway, you scatter these maybe in a shady area and then spray right over the top. The reason you'd put these out, take bifenthrin on sand. Remember that 95 to 99% of the flea population is in the immature stage. And that stage is at the base of the grass, down at the bottom near the ground. And so the granules sometimes can penetrate better than the sprays. And so you've got the granules down where the larvae are, or where the adults will emerge, and you can spray right over the top. I wouldn't do just one by themselves. I would do the granules with the spray. With your spray, you should always add a growth regulator. And that could be methoprene or pyriproxyfen. Methoprene is only for indoors, but methoprene is pretty cool because it's volatile. It moves around, kind of floats on you. Indoxacarb is used indoors, and not indoxacarb. The other one is used indoors and outdoors. Nygaard is the brand name, or Archer, and a pure proxipin. And it's got a phenomenal residual. It doesn't move, but it does have great residual. Lasts way longer than your broad spectrum spray. The other thing that can happen outdoors is, again, if you've got a flea infestation that's being brought in by wild animals, whether it's raccoons or possums or squirrels or rats, some kind of control may have to happen there, whether it's trapping or controlling the rodents. Inside, same kind of chemical choice. The difference here is we have some convenient aerosols that have the products in them, generally with a growth regulator, that are easy to apply. They dry fast. They don't put out a lot of liquid, so very effective. Or you can dilute a mix into your compressed air sprayer and treat the surfaces that way. Again, those indoor products generally have a residual component and a growth regulator. If you get fleas in a crawl space or an attic because of something like rodents, uh, squirrels, rats, you can use some dust there, or total release fogger. Dust lasts a little bit longer, tend to do a little better job. Then you also need a little patience, because sometimes, when you got animals moving in and out, or you've got a customer that's not doing their part, or you've got a large population that's just going to take a long time to crash because of that pupal case problem, a little bit of patience is required. If the customer doesn't clean up and you see something like this, sometimes it's best to walk away from a job rather than do the job and lose money on it, because you go back and back and back. Okay, let's move on to another plague of man, the bed bug. Blood bugs are vampires. They're blood-sucking insects in the order Hemiptera. They don't transmit disease, thank goodness, because they occur in pretty high numbers in apartments and sometimes hotels. They can, it's been proven in a lab, they could transmit Chagas, but they just don't, thank goodness. But they do cause problems. When they bite people, it causes irritation. For example, my wife reacts. She gets a big welt from them. I don't react. Some people do. It's allergic reactions. Some people, but the number one thing is probably the mental state when you get bed bugs. It just grosses you out. I mean, I've had them from travels, and I just feel violated. And so there's a mental aspect to having these things, and people who have bed bugs want them gone yesterday. Now, a little bit of history in the United States. From the early 1900s to the 1950s, bed bugs were part of life. In 1926, the recommendation from the Department of Ag was to soak your bedding with gasoline. I'm sure that was comfortable to sleep on. I hope you don't smoke in bed. Pre-1950, the USDA estimated that 50% of the houses in the U.S. had bed bugs. They also recommended cyanide gas as a control measure. Yeah, and by the way, the National Pest Management Association that we have in the United States now, which is a lobbying group and a group that helps us work together for the betterment of the industry, was started, according to that book, The Rat Catcher's Child, to help educate pest control operators not to kill other humans accidentally with cyanide gas. That was what it was. It was organized to do initially. 1941, the USDA recommended using the crack and crevices advice, basically taking a turkey feather, dipping it in kerosene or gas or turpentine, and doing crack and crevice work. And then DDT came on, and you would mix up about 5% DDT with kerosene, and kerosene was the carrier. And you put it in your sprayer, and you sprayed everything. And bed bugs pretty much went away in the United States. It was very effective on them. Here is a time-lapse video of immature bedbug feeding from the University of Kentucky, when Dr. Potter's students did this. And this would happen over, I think, about 11 or 12 minutes. You're going to see it in just a few seconds. Boom. He or she is probably a she based on the abdomen. No, it's a male. They're full, and they're going to wander off to a cryptic hidden area, and they're going to digest that blood, and a chunk of it's going to be pooped out. But yeah, that's it. So why did we get bed bugs back? We smoked them with DDT. Why did they come back? Well, a lot of international travel, bed bugs are hitchhikers. That's how I brought them home, traveling to different customers or locations, and they'll get into your luggage, and you'll bring a female back, and then in a couple of weeks you'll have a couple bites on you or your wife. The epicenter, based on DNA, was in Ohio, up in Ohio. That was where it all seemed to start. And the DNA testing traced these back to the Middle East. They could have come from multiple places, but that's where this initially showed they came from. We also have changed practices in pest control. We quit just spraying everything from the ceiling to the floor. We quit doing that. We quit spraying cabinets. We started doing IPM, crack and crevice applications, and more applications outside, less sprays inside. And so there wasn't a lot of protection when we would bring these things home because we weren't spraying everything because we didn't need to. And this allowed them to reinfest. We didn't know what they were. There's lack of knowledge, and we didn't know how to find them. And they're hard to find. They're very cryptic. They get deep into areas. That's their defensive mechanism, and they're hard to find. And so we did not treat them. I mean, here's another one of those pictures from time before. This is a lady setting off a bug bomb. Don't let the bed bugs bite, or bugs bite. Yeah, that's for bed bugs. She's fogging over a kid in the crib for DDT, or the kid in the crib or with DDT. And again, we eliminate them primarily in the United States. There were a few pockets, probably on poultry farms, but mostly they were gone. So bed bugs have a incomplete metamorphosis. That means when they hatch out of the egg, they are little bitty bugs that look like the adult. And there's 5 molts to an adult. And each time to shed their skin and get bigger, they need a blood meal. And there's an example of the bed bug life cycle: 5 immature stages and 1 adult stage. And then there's the immature. That's a first instar bed bug. You can see they're almost clear. If those 2 survive to adulthood, they'll be a darkish reddish brown. Eggs are white and oval shaped, and they're laid in nesting areas. They're stuck to a surface, and room temperature. They emerge 5 to 10 days, and a female bed bug lays about 5 eggs after a blood meal. Here's a picture of immature and the eggs and adults. This is in a crease on a mattress. The little white things are the eggs. Here's an adult. They're about 1/4 of an inch long, oval and flat. This is a female based how rounded the abdomen is, reddish brown. And when you have a bed bug mature population in the house, the population will be 12% adults, about 54% half nymphs, and 34% eggs. Another picture of, you can see lots and lots of eggs, those little white things, and then the reddish adults, reddish brown. So here's some bedbug facts. You got temperature affects growth and spread. Warmer it is, just like what I mentioned with the fleas. They're cold-blooded animals, so temperature affects them. Egg to adult takes 35 to 45 days under ideal conditions. You got to have some food, got to be warm enough, and they live about a year under ideal conditions. They will travel a distance for food, but would rather stay close to their host. This is true of most animals. Tastes like the closer you can be to your food source, the less energy you have to burn to get to the food. We don't like our refrigerators a mile away. We like them close to us, so we don't walk a mile to get to our food. Yeah, here's an example of transporting bed bugs. This is in a guy's apartment that was really infested. This is his laundry basket. Those little specks you see are bed bugs. And every time he went to the laundry, he was bringing bed bugs. Some of those are dead. A lot of them are alive. They, again, feed exclusively on blood. They don't feed every day, but they seek a blood meal once every 3 to 7 days. They can survive long periods of time without feeding. Not all of the bed bugs, but there's usually a few in every population that can go for a long time without feeding. Like they even think a year at times, but the 90% of the bed bugs can't do that. But there'll be some members of an infestation that can. They're not a nest. They just live in the same area. They are nocturnal. And again, I mentioned they're cryptic or very secretive. Mouth parts. They have this piercing, sucking mouth part, and it's shaped like a straw, and they poke into you, and it's a stock called a stylet. And it takes 10 to 15 minutes to become engorged, like you saw in the video. And again, a rare member can live without a year without feeding, but most can't. Bedbugs like to nest on, live on wood, paper, or surfaces, but they can live on stone, metal, or plaster. They usually find the deepest crack or seam they can get into inside furniture, close to where their food source is. And then as those areas get filled up, they move out, and you'll see them even up on the corners of the ceiling as other areas get full. This is anecdotal, sort of. This is a pest control company looking for bed bugs in a house and in infested houses. And what they found is that basically, in all areas they checked, 70% of infestation was in the bed. And most infestations were, I think, 7 to 20 bugs. That's when people started noticing bites. Heavy infestations, people don't usually tolerate them or allow them to get this to that point. But I have some pictures from a heavy, terrible infestation. It's an apartment in Dallas. That blackish brown you see around the edge of the ceiling, that's dried blood. Get a little closer, you can start to sort of see the bed bugs. You get even closer up on there, you can kind of see the little shiny or reddish brown bed bugs in the dried blood. When we sprayed up there with our insecticide, the blood kind of re-wetted and it ran down the wall, pretty gross in spots. Did kill the bed bugs, but that was just a nasty situation. The bed bugs were the worst I've ever seen anywhere. You never see them outside. There were so many bed bugs that they were in the tracks leading out to his patio, which was a second floor apartment. I never seen them that far out. That means that every crack or crevice void they could get into was pretty much full. And these ones that were accidentally getting outside, they were dying because they're drying out, had nowhere else to go. Here's an example. Here's a corner of one of the rooms. See all these bugs piled up and the blood spots. One more look at that. His 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 trips to the laundry and all the bed bugs he donated. His laundry basket full of bed bugs. And you can see them lots and lots. Here's a side picture I took beside one of the air vents. They were in the air vents when we took the cover off. This one apartment infested every other apartment in the building. They moved through the walls, through the air vents, every which direction. This is a seam on his mattress. I'm sure this person was losing a lot of blood every night. Another picture of one of those seams, just lots and lots of adult bugs, eggs, immatures. All of those are hungry. And these are the ones that are kind of out in the open. They're also deep inside the seams. So we kind of go over the biology of these things. Let's talk about control. Pretty simple. You've got to inspect them, try to find them, find evidence of them. Most infestations are nothing like what you just saw in the pictures. When you do find evidence, you have to have cooperation. The house has to be, your apartment has to be prepped. Encasements are a valuable tool to use in your program. That's what you put. These are bags basically that cover the mattress or the box springs that don't allow the bed bugs to either escape or reinfest the folds. They take away the folds they would get into. There are some monitors and pitfall traps that will actually prevent them from climbing up a leg of a bed. Some monitors use some odors to attract them, see if you have an infestation. Your chemical selection is very important. You need to be careful, and I wouldn't just use a pyrethroid chemistry. There's either combination chemistries that work very well or mixing a pyrethroid with a neonicotinoid. There's several products out there, or some chemistries like chlorphenapyr, which are very effective. Heat is a very, very good tool. There's a certain amount of time and temperatures you have to use to get control. Steam is another tool. There's some steam machines that if it hits them, it kills them immediately. And then these are not jobs that are usually done with one trip. It's usually multiple trips and the continued monitoring to get to control because they get so deep into areas. All right, I'm going to finish up with what happens with the clothes and what can kill a bed bug. So let's talk about laundering. What about washing? Well, if we don't do anything, they always, the adults, the nymphs, and the eggs survive. But if we wash in water that's 86 degrees, we kill a lot of the adults, about 80% of the nymphs, but 100% of the eggs survive. When it comes to get about 104 degrees, it kills all the adults, all the nymphs, but 76% of the eggs survive. And if you get up to 140 degrees in your wash, you'll kill every life stage. So 140-degree water. And then if you run your dryer and you run it on hot for 30 minutes, that will also kill every life stage. If you run it 104 for less than 10 minutes on hot, you'll kill a percentage of them, over 70%, but not that much over it. If you do it in cold water, you have very little effect. Cold water just doesn't do much to them. I guess they can hold their breath. Dry cleaning kills every stage 100%. That's chemical, laundering, and it will kill them. So washing and drying on hot water will kill, as long as you go for 30 minutes on the dryer and then run the normal wash cycle, you'll kill all three stages. And then you can also freeze them. You can put them in a deep freeze if you're at 1 degree Fahrenheit or less for over 2 hours. Will kill every life stage. If there's a whole bunch of clothes in a bag, you may want to leave that for a longer period of time to make sure that the temperature in the middle of the bag is also at the 1 degree Fahrenheit. So if it's just one piece of clothing, a couple hours will do it. But if it's a whole bunch in a bag, it takes a lot longer. All right, so that's I'm going to finish up there. If there are any questions on bed bugs, didn't get into ticks today. Ticks aren't as prevalent in the footprint of the good folks at Heritage. They're more of a Northeast problem. They are the number one vector of disease from an arthropod in the United States with Lyme disease, but in the South and Southeast, where we have a lot of fire ants, there aren't very many ticks like there used to be. So with that, thank you for your time today, and would ask for any questions.